Project Warlock was developed in 2018 by Buckshot Software and published by a gaming company aptly named Gaming Company. It is a first-person shooter created by 18-year-old Jacob Sislow, who worked on the game after school during his high school career. That's something I can't even imagine being able to do with all my free time, let alone after school. My high school career was, let's say, fraught. Not exactly an easy time to make a game, in between pimples and fashion disasters and getting mocked by the entirety of the football team for being a nerd.
Get those nerds! Nerd! Nerd!
Impressive work, 18-year-old Jacob Sislow. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Project Warlock is a love letter to retro shooters from the 90s, commonly called boomer shooters. We're going to break down why the game is good, what it does right, and by the end we'll know whether or not it's worth spending your money on. Spoiler alert, it's ow, 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 fine, I won't spoil the conclusion of the video. The game wears its influences on its sleeve. It firmly roots itself in both Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, with levels being mazes filled with secrets and treasures, being made out of 90-degree angles and driven by key hunts and lever throwing to open the doors and walls needed to progress. There's no reloading, and there's even an option to turn off being able to look up and down. The level design is actually really damn good here. I only occasionally had to wander around the map hoping to stumble across the correct path forward like some kind of lemming without an objective. The critical path is usually pretty clear and straightforward, letting you focus on the shooting instead of the puzzling. Levels are small and bite-sized. They go by super quick, which is amazing for being able to pick up and put down the game, but made recording footage a pain in the ass. I had 87 fucking videos recorded by the time I was done playing because I broke up my videos into a level-by-level structure to keep things organized. That's on me, though. Professional dumbass.
You're a fucking dumbass.
Can't fault the game for that. Each of the game's 5 episodes are broken up into 4 or 5 chunks of levels. Levels are grouped up in packs of 2 to 4 maps, between which you visit the workshop, upgrade your gear, buy the laughably irrelevant spells, and save your progress. Episode 1 was memorable mostly because I felt so ammo-starved, which is the result of not having unlocked any guns to switch to when I ran out of ammunition. This resulted in there being plenty of melee to be had in order to save ammo for the tougher enemies. It makes sense in a medieval kind of way, which is appropriate for the level, now that I think about it while writing. Episode 2 had great atmosphere. Ice and snow litter the maps, and the monster types hint at something going horribly wrong. Between the Yeti things and the black oozes, I felt thoroughly creeped out. This escalated into dudes that burst into tentacle monster form when I shot them, which culminated in the battle against the Great Old One. Episode 3 is probably the least memorable, which is saying something because ancient Egypt is cool as shit. There's mummies and cat girls. No, not like that. And no, not like that either. But that's just about all I remember other than the final boss. It takes effort to make a pyramid level bland, but Project Warlock succeeds here. This is the worst of the episodes, but it's important to note that I still had a blast shooting my way through it. The worst episode is still fantastic, it's just overshadowed by how awesome the other episodes turned out. Episode 4 introduces enemies with much faster projectiles and lots of ranged damage. I had to step up my game in order to survive, start abusing corners for cover and more. Personally, my most memorable levels are here. The shipyard with its open sky and chain link fences, and a level with a skyscraper where you climb the building and rising floors until you reach the roof. Episode 5 kicked my ass. It's populated by a mixture of enemies from the previous 4 episodes and new enemies that shoot rockets and or blorp out melee monsters that get in the way. Yeah, that's right, I just used the word blorp in casual conversation. The very last level of episode 5 before the boss is where I finally ran out of lives and it reset me back to the start of the episode for the first and only time. If I had to complain about something in the level design, it's that some levels start you off under fire immediately without a chance to situate yourself before a fight breaks out. This is mostly fine if you're ready for it, but it was a pain in the ass when recording from the start of a level. I probably made things harder on myself than I needed to, but it's a pet peeve of mine when you start a level in a shooter and there's combat practically before the loading screen ends. Enemy variety is fantastic. Each episode has its own set of bad guys, which helps keep things fresh and cements change from episode to episode, keeping things feeling varied and interesting. Enemies range from this thing, to that thing, to these things, to those things over there. With a few exceptions, the enemies either want to close into melee and kill you, or close into melee while they fire projectiles and kill you that way. There are a decent amount of graphical options available, including CTR scan lines and a slider for pixelization. You can play the game looking like I did, or you can play the game looking like this. If you decide to play with the graphics set up so that you can see a damn thing, they look fantastic. I know pixel art in indie games are a dime a dozen, but you can tell that a lot of love and labor went into the graphics for Project Warlock. It's pretty to look at. Enemies, items, walls, pits, guns, ammo pickups, and everything else you can imagine are all distinct and easy to see. There was one point where the Succubi enemy from the first act was easily confused for the Succubi enemy from the final act, which is an important fuck up to make because the first episode's Succubi shoot a slow-moving projectile, and the 5th episode Succubi are fast-moving rockets, but for the most part, the enemies are all distinct and easily distinguished from each other. Graphically, my only other complaint is that the optional minimap is pretty useless. Game either needs to zoom out the minimap or add an automap that I can flip to see the whole level's layout, but it's not that bad because the levels are so small that I can see why they didn't bother adding one. The sound effects are great. As has been said before, no news is good news, and there's no news here. Every weapon sounds fine. The highlight of the sound design in Project Warlock, though, is the soundtrack. The soundtrack was written by Jerry Lehr. Jerry Lehr, and it's fantastic. It evokes the midis of old without being strictly one itself, straddling a midline between old school and new school very effectively. Check it out. I had visions of Doom. I had visions of Castlevania. It's dark and energetic, and most importantly, it suits the action really well. What plot? Like its inspiration, Project Warlock barely has a story. One guy has set out to destroy all evil. That's you. Get shooting. End of story. Literally. No, the puns are not going away. Shooting feels slick and rewarding. There's good feedback for when you hit something, and oftentimes that feedback clues you in on how a weapon functions. Take the shotgun, for instance. The further back you are from an enemy, the further apart the pellet marks are when you hit that enemy. This tells the player that they'll probably do more damage from up close. I mean, it's a shotgun. This is how all shotguns work in all shooters ever, but it's still a good detail to add. Enemies have certain health pools, and weapons deal certain amounts of damage. Both of these variables are fairly consistent rather than hugely RNG dependent, so you wind up learning how many shots it takes to kill an enemy with any given weapon if you use it a lot. If you don't miss, it feels really good to down a room full of bad guys with precise aim, not wasting any ammo at all. Movement is snappy and smooth. I started out without using auto run because I have a horrible habit of running into walls like a bird flying into glass windows at high speeds. But as I adjusted, I gradually found myself running more often until ultimately I just left auto run on all the time. Project Warlock boasts a small number of RPG elements. To be honest, they felt kind of tacked on, like they were included out of some kind of contractual obligation indie shooters have to use experience points and level ups to generate some feeling of progression. That's not to say that the RPG elements don't work, though. They do work, and they work well. Killing monsters and collecting treasure generates experience points, which level you up. Every level you gain a stat point, which I only spent on capacity to increase ammo and life to increase my hit points. And every 5th level you get a perk point, which I spent on taking less damage and increasing the amount of life and ammo I got from pickups. There were other options, but they just didn't seem to benefit the core gameplay loop much at all. You spend these points on your character in the workshop, which you can access every few levels before launching yourself into the next map like some kind of murder-addicted demon-slaying gunslinger who can't help themselves but play, and I quote, just one more level. Editor's note. On account of being a professional dumbass, I forgot to mention the gun upgrades. Every gun has 2 choices of upgrade, and they cost upgrade points, which you find scattered throughout the levels as you play. Once you take an upgrade, you're locked out of the other option for that gun. It's one or the other. You can't take more than 1 upgrade for each weapon. The same points you use to upgrade the weapons are used to buy the spells, but we'll talk about that later. The game sports an array of melee weapons, but I only used the dagger and the axe, and even then, really only in the first episode. The axe is slow, but one of the upgrades let you heal yourself, an upgrade that I got too late, really. When I do my next playthrough, I'll definitely be grabbing this upgrade first. The pistol sucks until you upgrade it, then it kicks ass. I used the pistol in every map to eliminate low and mid-tier enemies in 1 or 2 shots. Once I got used to the ammo consumption, it was a fantastic weapon even at long ranges. The staff takes mana to use instead of ammunition. I got the ice upgrade for it, and even though it did tons of damage, the long windup between shots left me leaning on other weapons to get the job done. The SMG is good when you first get it, and I grabbed the Akimbo upgrade which let me dual wield them. They did really good damage, but they share a pool of ammunition with the minigun, so when I upgraded the minigun, I just stopped using these entirely. Of course the game has a shotgun. 2 of them, in fact, but that's coming up next. When you pick up this gun, it does exactly what it does best. Blast low-level enemies to Kingdom Come. I got the auto-shotty upgrade, which removes the delay between shots, but ultimately I found that my shells were better spent on the next weapon. Speaking of which, that weapon is the double-barrel shotgun. Not quite the super shotgun from Doom 2, but close enough to utterly destroy just about everything except the biggest and baddest of the baddies. I grabbed the quad damage upgrade for this thing, and holy shit did it murder things with a satisfying efficiency. The game has a flamethrower too. I was initially going to say that it just doesn't suck, but later in my playthrough I found myself switching to it not just to save pistol and minigun ammo, but also to melt entire rooms of low and mid-level monsters. This thing kicks ass. You could say it was fire. I know, terrible pun. I'm fired. There's a crossbow. I forgot this thing existed, if I'm honest. I didn't use it much. I didn't spend any upgrade points on it either, so it might be badass if you upgrade it, but I wouldn't know because it wasn't good enough for me to upgrade in the first place. The minigun was the workhorse of my playstyle. It wasn't worth the ammo until I upgraded it to remove the spin-up time and increase the damage, then it destroyed things so satisfyingly, I had a hard time justifying the use of other weapons until I ran out of ammo. The rocket launcher does its job, exactly as you'd expect it to do. The rockets move a little more slowly than I expected, which is fine because there's an upgrade that turns it into a hit scan weapon, basically turning it into a railgun. I relied on hit scan rockets to take down the biggest and the baddest of the enemies in the late game. Hi, Professional Dumbass here in the editing phase. I forgot entirely that there is actually a laser rifle and grenades, dynamite sticks to get the upgraded grenades. The grenades were awkward and difficult to throw, and the laser rifle never did enough damage for me to upgrade, but apparently the upgrade for the laser rifle can actually become a railgun. I don't know. But they're there, and I didn't use them because I was too busy using the other weapons, which fucking kicked ass. To be blunt, I didn't use them. There's a free one for lighting up dark areas, but the game was never so dark that I couldn't see anything, so I never used it. On top of that, you have to spend weapon upgrade points on the spells, so I hesitated to purchase them because shooting was working so well that I wanted to keep putting points into it. There was a spell that converted my mana into a small amount of ammunition for whatever weapon I had equipped at the time, which was cool because otherwise my mana was just sitting there doing nothing for me. In conclusion, Project Warlock is a fantastic indie shooter that thrives on the design that saw the shooter genre launched into success during its infancy. It pays homage to its roots both aesthetically and, more importantly, in its design philosophy. It's fast, frantic, and fun. The levels are small, but there's plenty of them. The episodes are memorable. The guns are great. All in all, this is a fantastic addition to the collection of anyone who likes old school shooters, and acts as a great entry point to the genre for folks who don't know yet. Thanks for watching. I'm Evil Squeegee. Peace out.